All right, we are back, and I'm joined once again by Chris Kacvinsky from Bulletproof Action. Welcome back, Chris.
Pack it up, pack it in. Let me begin. We're
Yes,
talking the sweeper.
yes. I was gonna say, well, Chris and I are both decked out in our jeans with holes in them, our goatees, and our House of Pain hats to talk the
Better believe
sweeper.
it. You better believe it.
Yes, yes. And one of the things I was talking about earlier before we started the episode is that I've noticed in the demographics of the show that we have some younger listeners. Now, it's possible that one might just be my nephew Chase, which Chase, if you're out there, thanks for listening. Great to hear from you. We're going to your graduation party. Actually, going to your graduation party this weekend, but this episode will come out well after you've graduated. So, but
Right. So you better have your shit together and know what you're doing with your life at that point.
Exactly. Yeah. And the one reason why I think it might be him is because the demographic shifted from 17 and under to 18 to 22 or something like that. So it's like,
Right.
and he would have
Oh,
gone from 17 to 18 recently. So it's possible that it's him. Um, but I was thinking like, okay, for younger listeners, like, how do you explain what PM entertainment is? Like what this phenomena that we always just talk about, sort of like it's like a language. Like you just say PM and you know what we're talking
right.
about. I
Right.
almost I feel like this movie might be the best like instead of trying to explain it, this movie might be the best explanation.
Yeah, you really just have to watch one and you'll know because I was yeah, trying to think about that. It's like every example I have, like they wouldn't know the example I'm giving them. Like I would say, it's like a little bit of canon with some late night Skinamax, and you mash it together, and you know, and yeah. Speaking to today's audience, the youth, it's like it's like uh 45 2-minute TikToks all in a row or something. I don't know what to say.
Right. Well, the other thing too about this movie is that recently I was doing like solo podcast episodes on the John Wick series. And one of the things I realized is that like all of my favorite, kind of the big budget actioners, all the ones that are my favorites from like the 2010s, they either were action directed or stunt coordinated, however you want to say it, by Spiro Razatos, who's the stunt coordinator on this
Right.
film, or it's like Chad Stahelski or Darren Prescott, guys that worked with him on movies like Recoil.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's amazing, even just for the younger listeners out there, that like, yeah, like pretty much every like I mean I think I was trying to think like the only great action movie I can think of that didn't have one of those three names involved from the 2010s would be like Deadpool, if I think of the first Deadpool, because the second one had Darren Prescott. But I mean, obviously the John Wicks are Chad Stahelski with Darren Prescott on a couple of them. All the Fast and Furiouses are, is that a good plural for Fast and Furious?
Yes.
Fast and Fast and
Perfect.
okay, yeah, like they're all Spiro Razatos.
Right.
Captain America, Winter Soldier is Spiro Razatos. But so it's interesting. It's almost like they said to Spiro Razatos here in the '90s. PM was just like, "Here's our budget. Yeah, you get like 3 or 4 action scenes in the movie here. Just do whatever you want with them as long as they're within our budget."
And maybe that is the way to explain to a younger generation what PM is. It's Fast and Furious mixed with softcore porn. That might be the best.
Right, right. With actors that either are like burgeoning action stars who just never quite make it over the hump, right? Like Gary Daniels or Jeff Wincott or Don the Dragon, or guys like C. Thomas Howell we're going to talk about here, who were big for like a small period of time.
Right.
Whether it was C. Thomas Howell doing like The Outsiders and The Hitcher, or like Lawrence Hilton Jacobs from Welcome Back, Kotter, who
Right.
suddenly
Boom
like
boom.
right, exactly. Now we're taking him seriously in these L.A. Heat movies, and whatever other names that they gave to them, or Jeff Conaway, right? It's like, okay, once he's you know not doing
With
celebrity rehab or anything like that, they're propping him up in a PM flick and having him hit on Tracy Lords. It's like just getting these names here like that.
or just taking a chance on people like Anna Nicole Smith. I mean, she was just I mean, obviously not the great actress, but she was a hot name at the time and was willing to get naked on film, so let's give her a job.
Right. Well, and what I love about that one with Skyscraper is it's just like, okay, we got this action movie, right, where we've got like Malibu from American
Right.
Gladiators, and we're it's almost like too like I think it was Simon from Explosive Action sent me this like blooper reel. I think it's on YouTube if you find it. There's a blooper reel for Skyscraper where you actually find out that the reason why they made Anna Nicole Smith's character a helicopter pilot is that she would wear a headset and they could feed her lines through the headset.
Nice.
So I mean, like that kind of stuff. But it's like,
Makes
oh,
sense. Yeah.
right? It's like kind of the ingenuity, right? And it's like you got these really great, like it's like a legitimately good action movie with softcore porn just kind of like I don't know, wedged in. Is wedged a good term when we're talking about softcore porn? See, it's like
Yes. It's again, you're picking all the right words tonight.
exactly. So yeah, they just like okay, we got to shoehorn these in here because we've got Anna Nicole Smith in it, and it's like one of them's like a flashback sequence. It's just like oh by the way, do you remember when this happened? Oh, let's just throw this in here.
Yeah. Remember when you were banging?
Yeah, yeah, and I mean this movie, it's but when we get into this one, we have one pretty decent love scene, and then we have like a what you call maybe like a figurative love scene when we
Oh
get into it
yeah.
later about honeycombs, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, well, so why don't we'll get stuck in on this bad boy here, the sweeper. Now, the sweeper should not be confused with the Dolph Lundgren movie of a similar name.
Right.
And one of the things I think about that movie is I'd read that that was directed by Keone Waxman, who we refer to as the Seagal Whisperer because of all the movies he's directed with Seagal. Um, and apparently he had trouble working with Dolph, and I wonder if that's like that experience like allowed him to be like more of a actor's director, and suddenly it was just like, oh, this guy can actually work with Seagal, and like maybe that's how he found his niche there.
Maybe. So we have Dolph to blame.
Right, for all this like all non-reverse shots. I mean, yeah, what Cody Waxman, I think he had like an 8-year period where it was just Seagal movies.
Hmm. Yeah, he pissed somebody off somewhere.
Right, exactly. Yes, but I feel like it's one of those things where because I on the I Must Break This podcast that Sean Malloy does the Dolph podcast. He interviewed Benjamin Sachs, who's like the line producer on a lot of those Seagal movies, and he was describing like what it was like. And I kind of almost feel like with Keone Waxman as the director, it's almost like that friend who has a truck and all the other friends call when they need to move something. It's almost like line
Yeah.
producers are just like, "Hey, Keone, yeah, Seagal came to us. He wants to do another movie. You're not doing anything, are you?" Uh, he's like, right? He's like the
That
pickup
makes
truck,
sense.
right? Yeah. But anyway, yeah. So that of course that's a whole different kettle of fish. The Keone Waxman Seagal movies, but with this one here, the sweeper. Yeah. So I mean, we'll get into it here. It's basically like a cross between, I guess, like what like maybe like the Punisher or the Shaft and the Executioners. I don't know if you ever saw that one, the one of the Shaft TV movies called The Executioners.
I did not.
Yeah, it's got a similar idea to this, where you've got cops that are kind of going outside the law and executing people.
Yeah, I mean, that's, the vigilante cop is always a wonderful character to follow. And we got to see Thomas Howell in here, and he does a really good job of being that maverick cop who is a perfect candidate for a bunch of vigilante cops. So, but before we get into that, we see him as a youngster, as a teenager.
Yes. So the movie starts in 1980, and it is either the best Adam 12. It's like the best Adam 12 episode we never got, or it's if Spiro Razatos made Adam 12. That's what this opening sequence is.
This, the saying, take a long walk off a short pier.
Right?
This is not that pier.
No, no, no. It's classic PM in the sense that now one of the things I was going to ask you, and I think maybe it's different. I think 1980 to 1995 is different than like 2009 to 2024. But if somebody came to you and said, "Can you make something look like 2009?" I wouldn't know how to answer that.
Right. And honestly, I thought this felt more 70s. Of course, I know 80 was still basically the 70s, but yeah, this felt way more 70s, except for all like the plastic patio chairs that were seen, because those things did not exist in 1980. That maybe a little later in the 80s, yes, but not right at 1980. You had the old aluminum
Yes,
or
yes.
metal chairs. You didn't have these plastic chairs.
Yeah, it's almost like they said, okay, to make, like you said, like the late 70s or 1980, they said, okay, we'll get a car off the set from the old Adam 12 show, and we'll dress the guys up like Milner and or like yeah, I was gonna say Milner is the actual actor's name. The characters are I always think Milner and McCord are the actual actors. I always get them mixed up with their characters, which are Malloy and Reed and Malloy. But I always remember Kent McCord from the second Predator movie, where he played the sensible cop, as opposed to like the angry
Right.
sergeant who's yelling at people. But yeah, so they said, okay, we'll get Adam 12, and then we will have people dress up like 90s kids who raided a Goodwill or a thrift shop, right? And are wearing stuff at a cafe just so they hope that somebody says, "Hey, man, that's a really cool jacket you got on." And that's how they did the 70s. But but when it's PM, it's like this is fantastic, like because we know really they're just kind of doing this to get us to the first action sequence.
Right. And it is quite the sequence. Again, this is a chase that goes on this pier, and it's this is like the runway from that one Fast and Furious movie that just went on and on and on and on. It's a never ending pier, and
Yes,
it
yeah.
just goes and it goes and it goes, and then of course eventually they end up in the ocean. But it takes a long damn time for them to get in that ocean.
It does exactly. Yeah. So what happens is Faye. So the son is played. So the young, sorry, not the son. The young C. Thomas Howell is played by Max Elliott Slade, who I don't know. I never really watched the Three Ninjas movies, but that's I guess what he's
Yeah.
known for, right?
Yeah,
That
I've never did either, but that's what I had in my notes from
yeah.
when I reviewed it. And I'm like, oh, okay. But yeah, I've never saw those. Those came out. I was already I was watching PM movies when when
Right,
Three Ninjas came
exactly.
out. I didn't want to watch some kids movie. I needed
Right.
some sex in my action movie.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. The closest thing I came to the Three Ninjas movies was Pocket Ninjas with Gary Daniels.
Oh, I never saw that, but with Gary Daniels, yeah, I'll have to check it out.
It is horrible. It's a Cine XL with Robert Zadar doing pratfalls and like
Oh, Robert,
whimsical humor.
now you really sold me. Zadar
Yeah.
and Daniels?
It,
Huh. Who can
yeah.
go wrong?
Well, I mean, the whole thing goes wrong, but it's like it is definitely like was yeah if loving you is wrong, I don't want to be right. It's like one of those things where
Right.
like yeah, it's like it's so wrong that it's right.
Right.
Is yeah, but it's like one of those things when you're watching it that you're just like I can't what just happened there, and yeah, anytime you see Robert Z'Dar doing comedy, I think that's always yeah. That's how it's worth it. But yeah, so we've got Max Slade. He's in the back of his card. His dad is played by C. Thomas Howell's dad is played by Jeff Fahey. So Fahey was kind of in and around these late '90s PM ones. Of course, he had his own. I'm drawing a blank here. I should have probably pulled that had it in my notes.
Was it the underground?
The Underground, yes, with
Yeah.
the Las Vegas disco explosion or something that it was with Gregory Scott Cummins. Yeah, so which is another fantastic PM flick. I mean, you look at the cover of that one; it's just Fahey on the cover of a car that's speeding down the highway, and
Yes.
it's like, okay, yes, why wouldn't I want to watch that? That's fantastic. And this is almost like an amuse bouche. It's almost like this is like a trailer for the Underground. It's like, hey, if you liked Fahey here, watch. It's like you get a little Fahey here of what a taste of what the Underground's like. But yeah, they're in the car. They're saying all kinds of horrible things in front of Fahey's son, in front of the young C. Thomas Howell. They ask him if he wants to be a cop, and he's like, "Shit, yeah." And they're like, "Come on, like, watch your
Yeah,
mouth in
watch your
front of your
mouth.
dad."
Right.
Right, exactly. And then they pull up on the pier at Santa Monica Pier, and here are these '90s kids, dressed up in their outfits that they got from Goodwill, and they're speaking in '70s jive with Fahey. There's a sense that maybe he's on the take, or there's some bad guys that he might be into some more, but he kind of says, no, we're still going to arrest you. And then there's a little bit of a brouhaha. And then kind of like we hear about often with like Uber drivers and DoorDash drivers that take their kids with them, that suddenly when they're doing a delivery, they get carjacked and their kids are in the back of the car. Um, that's what happens here to Fahey, because in PM entertainment world, cop cars are there to be stolen,
Right.
and baddies will take the card. So So the baddie takes the car and he speeds off with Jeff Fahey's son, our young C. Thomas Howell, in the back. And so Jeff Fahey does what any normal cop would do. He hops on a dirt bike. I think it was a dirt bike, right? Or it was like a maybe like a small like Indian motorcycle or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they always look like dirt bikes to me, but it probably is more of a motorcycle. Because who's got a dirt bike on the pier? I don't know.
Right, exactly. I mean, here in Philadelphia, people ride dirt bikes everywhere, so it's possible, but that this is almost 30 years later, so I don't know. But yeah, so this is like what you talk about. This is we right off the bat we get one of this is like the like you said, it's like the big airplane chase scene in like Fast and Furious 6, but we're getting it in the first 10 minutes of movie.
Right, right. Yeah, it's like almost using like a bit of the James Bond formula, like, oh, we got to do something real big at the front end,
Right.
and just get you in there, and yeah, but and most movies you'd be like, oh, they're blowing their load early, but don't worry, folks, this is TM Entertainment. We got two more of these types of situations to come.
Yeah, and you can't even imagine how you can have a better chase scene than this. I mean, because this is just like they're flying down the boardwalk. I mean, you've got all manner of stands that are getting smashed through, fruit flying all over the place. People are dodging all over the place. It's like everybody's, people are flying over the hoods of the car. And, Fahey's chasing behind because it's like, hey, this is my son. I got to get him. And, how is he going to, when he's riding behind him in a motorcycle, how is he going to catch to the car?
Right.
He does like anybody would do. He gets his feet up on the seat and then he just propels himself over the motorcycle and lands on his police car, and he's hanging on to the hood. So we've got that for a little bit. But see, what Fahey doesn't realize is that, oh, if I'm hanging on to this car, the driver's probably not going to drive too well, and there's like water next to us here. But Fahey's got that covered too, because when the car eventually does smash through the pier and land in the water, he just dives in there and gets his son out, and everything's okay.
And yeah, this was kind of a little misdirection because you kind of almost felt like, okay, Fahey's gonna die here. Something, like somebody's obviously, we know C. Thomas House. Well, I guess at that point we wouldn't, but but no, they all survive for now.
Right, because this is PM, and unfortunately, if you've seen enough of these PM movies, you know that nobody's family is safe.
Right.
So we go back to our quote unquote 70s house, where Fahey is there, and he's freaked out about something, and he's like kind of rummaging through things and calling people. His wife is there, dinner's ready. He's trying to get Fahey's attention. The daughter, so C. Thomas Howell's sister, she's upstairs dancing to her 70s music with her 70s outfit on. And hey, they didn't have the rights to anything. I think at that time it probably would have been the Pina Colada song, and that would have been a fun scene, right? To have Fahey be like, I can't handle that Pina Colada song again. It's like, but it's PM that. Yeah, right. But yeah, so the wife's concerned, and she says, hey, are you on the take? Which was the best line ever, to have your wife when you're a cop say, "Are you on the take?" It's just fantastic.
Yeah, listen to her using that inside lingo, talking like she's on the streets.
Yeah, and then we get our baddies who just break down the door with shotguns. They're the kind of guys that probably you would get a lot of pushback from Italian American communities in America, the ones who were upset about the way that they looked in The Sopranos. I think they would say, okay, we're tired of this depiction of us, because these are like as like bad like Goodfellas knockoff like guys as you possibly can get, who come in here and just start blowing the family away.
Yeah, they are definitely some mob hitmen, and they are earning their checks that day, that moment. They take everybody out.
Yeah,
except one.
Well, right, and it's interesting because this one guy, he corners young Mark Goddard, young C. Thomas Howell, in the bathroom, and he's
not as bad as that sounds, folks. Go on.
No, he's getting ready to shoot him because he was trying to hide in the bathroom. So he's coming in to kill him. And Mark notices that he's also got a small like snub nose 32 or something in his waist. And the guy goes, "Oh, you want to shoot me? Huh? You got the balls? You think you're going to shoot me?" And we get this kind of long extended scene of like him trying to goad Mark into shooting him, and finally Mark can't pull the trigger, so the guy goes, "Okay, well I'm going to shoot you," but he survives the shotgun blast. And I gotta say, if I was 14, is it between 14 and 16, whatever his age is, he wakes up in a coma to his grandmother and a young woman who lives near the grandmother that he has a crush on. Which, if I
Yeah.
was 14 and I woke up in a coma after being shot in the head, I would think my grandmother showing up with a girl that I had a crush on who lived near her would be a pretty nice way to wake up.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he probably jerked off to that girl, and now that's one of the first faces he sees. I mean, that's nice.
Right, exactly, exactly. It probably gave a warm. It definitely softens the blow of learning that your entire family has been wiped out. So for sure. So we get that, and then we get fast forward to 15 years later, where we've got C. Thomas Howell, pretty much lying in bed, no shirt on, lying in his apartment, essentially trying to do like a, I don't know, like a Corey Hart video or something, like Never Surrender or something going on there.
Yeah, he's got the goatee. He's very 90s. Very 90s.
And when he goes to meet his ex-wife, who's played by Janet Gunn, who's supposed to be this young woman that is there when he wakes up from his coma, he goes to see her at the fish restaurant that she works at, and he looks like the saxophonist in a 90s session group. Like, his like somebody is doing a performance on like Letterman or something like that, or Jay Leno, and he's there playing the sax as the backing, for them. That's kind of the look he's got
I
on
can
with like
see it. Yeah.
the vest, he definitely tight rolled his jeans as well, which I know that was the thing. And then I think I did it a few times in the 90s.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah, he's
Yeah.
in, yeah.
Yeah, I'm having high school flashbacks, but thank you.
Exactly. That's it. Well, what's amazing is it's one thing for it to be high school flashbacks, but he's supposed to be in his late
Right.
20s, early
Right.
30s. He's dressed like this.
He's a grown ass man
Yeah,
dressing
and
like that.
the thing I couldn't tell when he's meeting with Janet, sorry, I keep wanting to call her Janet Gunn. Her character's actually named Melissa, but Janet Gunn, of course, who took over for Mitzi Capture when I guess they reboot. They didn't reboot
Oh.
Silk Stocking. They just put new cast members in.
Yeah, yeah, Chris and Rita left.
Yeah,
And they just yeah, I remember stopping watching Silk Stockings after that.
yeah. It was fascinating that it had the guy my friends and I always referred to him as Kane's wussy son from Kung Fu: The Legend Continues, because it always seemed like Carradine, the guy who played his son, would always get the crap beat out of him whenever the baddie showed up. So that was the other person that was taking over. But so I remember I was curious about the fact that he was doing something other than Kung Fu: The Legend Continues, and then after once that curiosity wore off, I was done with it as well.
Yeah, Chris and Rita made the show, and I'm like, what? No, I don't want to watch this anymore if you're taking them off.
No, it's one of those things where like with shows where I think people try to see if they can get away with doing them without the cast, and
Hmm.
sometimes it just is the cast. It's like Miami Vice, or but I guess the best one's Dukes of Hazzard, right? When it was Vance and Coy.
Right.
Nobody
That
cared about Vance and Coy.
that was an outrage too. Yeah.
Right, exactly. It's like just pay them,
I think
whatever
I
they want.
still watched it, but it's like at that time too, I had like four or five channels at my disposal. So, it's like, we'll watch. Maybe
Right.
they'll come back. And they did.
Yeah, eventually, because I think what it was back then is it wasn't about ratings. It was a letter writing campaign that would change things, because, like you said, you only had 4 or 5 channels, so you couldn't just not watch it, right? Because what were you going to do? You're going to, what was
Yeah.
on the other channel, like Falcon Crest or
TGI
something?
TGIF did not exist yet. So what were kids gonna watch?
Right, right, exactly. And
I
so,
think it was Incredible Hulk and like Dukes of Hazzard.
yeah,
And then
exactly.
and then Dallas was on after, but at that point it was bedtime. So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, and those were like later Incredible Hulk seasons as well. So it was like, I
Right.
don't, people were kind of done. It's like, okay, we get it. He gets mad at the end of the episode. We understand how it works now. It's like,
Then he walks away sadly at the end.
exactly right. Yeah, God, those streets. It's now it's like whatever. Now living in Philadelphia, where there's sidewalks everywhere. It's like if I go visit my family and I see all these kind of dirt roads with no sidewalks, I just think Incredible Hulk, like just end of the episode kind of thing. So we find out here at this fish restaurant two things, right? We find out one that C. Thomas Howell's Mark Goddard character, he's so much of a cop on the edge that his marriage fell apart. So he's no
Mhm.
longer married. And his wife has married a new guy who wants to open a fish restaurant with her. And you could tell that she still loves Mark. She still wants to be with him. She's settling for the fish market guy. But it's one of those things where I guess it's hard when you're a woman in the mid '90s and some guy comes to you with a portfolio saying, "Hey, this is how we can have a nice life together here with this fish, no, not fish
Safe,
market, fish restaurant."
safety, security. Doesn't have to worry. You're not gonna worry. Is my fish restaurant owner husband gonna come home alive tonight or not?
Yeah,
You don't
yeah.
have
I
to worry
mean,
about that.
you'd hear the way people think of cities out, they think that like there's so much crime going on that somebody would just come in and rob you in your fish restaurant. But that was a kind of a fish restaurant that nobody was really going to get harmed in. And so,
Right. Right. It
yeah,
wasn't it wasn't a fast food type like where somebody would come in real quick to get the register.
right.
This was a sit down, make some reservations. This was a classy joint. Now, of course, anything could happen in this crazy world, but the odds
Right.
of c- over here the cop getting shot or the fish guy, the cop is much more likely to get shot, especially one like him who was always go 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 and
Right.
very aggressive and
Yeah, Mr. Cop on the Edge. Now, before we get into the first case that he's on, that leads to a really fantastic foot chase, I have to bring up when he meets his son and there's like a montage of him and his son doing things. That was like the lamest montage of dad doing stuff with a strange son that I've ever seen. I don't know what your thoughts were there.
yeah, it didn't seem like a real great time for that kid. I felt sorry for him at that moment in time.
Yeah, there's like one scene where like they find these fake like foam swords and see Thomas Howell's like pretending to play swords with him and it's like so like just sort of like let me get this over with that I don't know. Yeah, it's just and I guess I don't know if I was that age and my dad looked like that, if I would be like he just looks so cool because he's so cool is that I wouldn't care what he did, or if I'd be like, man, he's so lame, I don't want to be around him.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. My dad never had a goatee, so I don't know.
I know. And my dad definitely never wore black vests with tight rolled
Yeah, I don't
jeans
think
or
I've ever seen my dad in a vest.
right, exactly. So yeah, it's hard to know. But yeah, so we get that scene, and it's almost like they just kind of get us through that so that we can get to our first real case. And this is where not only are we introduced to Mark Goddard, the cop, and we get to see him in action, we're introduced to his too sweet House of Pain hat.
Oh yeah. Oh, jump around when I saw that. I was so excited.
Yeah. It took me a second to realize it was House of Pain because it was like the way it's written in like this green Irish script on a black background, it
Right.
looks like it could have been any Irish bar that he, like I was in San Antonio and I was at an Irish bar and I got the hat of the place, like it could have, but when you realize it's House of Pain, it's too fantastic.
It really dates the film, but that's fine because it is pure 90s. We love it.
Yes, and it doesn't get any more 90s than that. And so the case here is I was trying to figure out exactly what was going on here, but I think it's that there's a guy who is like stalking women who use ATMs,
That
and
is
they're
correct.
having a female detective work as a sting to kind of catch him.
That is correct. Yes, this man is like stabbing women at the ATM for whatever reason.
Yes. One of the things I noticed, and I don't know if I don't remember if we actually had this in New England. I don't know if it's something that you had in Cleveland where if you use the ATM, there'd be coupons on the back of the receipt that you could use for like free French fries at McDonald's or whatever was advertised on the ATM. I don't know if that was something that you had.
No. Ah, man, I got ripped off. I was paying full price for my French fries.
Yes. I mean, it's almost like it takes care of that because every place had ATM fees at that time. It took care of the ATM fees, right? That you could,
Yeah, that
get a
makes
free French
sense.
fry. Yeah. Like for some reason that must have not caught on in outside of LA, but yeah, and so that might have been who he was stabbing them for too, is he wanted the coupons that were on the
Right.
receipts.
Who doesn't want French fries?
Right, exactly. So they after a day of kind of her wandering around and them not really getting any hits, they're about to give it up until we see Thomas Howell with some binoculars underneath the visor of his too sweet House of Pain hat. He catches someone who he thinks is suspicious, and sure enough, that's our guy. So He goes to stab the woman. So the woman's played by Catherine Middleton. She's playing the detective. He goes to stab her. She knocks the knife away, and then his partner shows up, who is a character actor who's kind of been in everything. As, I think it's Steve Easton, I think is the actor's name. If I'm looking at it right, maybe I'm looking at the wrong guy because it's these character actors. They it is Steve Easton. That's him. I noticed with these characters, sometimes they use pictures that don't really have a good zoom on them.
Right.
But yeah, if I tell you the name, you're not going to know who it is. But if I showed you a picture of what he looked like then, you'd be like, oh, I know that guy from 8 Million Things. He gets stabbed in the stomach, and C. Thomas Howell runs over to see if he's okay. And when the guy says, yes, I'm okay, cue the foot chase. So we're already into another chase scene here.
Yeah, and this one is, we really get to see the lengths that our man Goddard will go to get a perp, to get a bad guy, because they're like, they end up just hanging a job,
Right.
dangling to their death.
Well, right. And the other thing too is I think this is a testament to how great Spiro Razatos is as action director. That you've got C. Thomas Howell like ADR'd with like this like raspy, like weird, like punkish voice, like yelling at the guy he's chasing, like, come on, motherfucker, come on, motherfucker, stuff like that. It's like I'm laughing at that, but yet I'm also excited by this fun chase scene here. And then you're right, like what he does is like he tackles the guy because of course every foot chase has to end on a roof, right? Like he can't.
Right. Why wouldn't a bad guy go somewhere where there's going to be no escape? Go to the roof. It's just like in a horror movie, the stupid victims go upstairs instead of out the front door.
Right,
It's what you do.
Yes. Yeah, and this guy falls in right into the trap, and he gets to the roof, and there's Mark Goddard's got him cornered there, and then he tackles him, so they've fallen over to the side, and then the guy punches him multiple times, and Mark Goddard thinks, well, what am I going to do? I mean, this guy's punching me multiple times. I have no other recourse other than to take this perfectly placed rope that's hanging here, wrap it around his throat, and then we'll fall off together and it'll hang him. And then, of course, I'll be okay. I'll just climb up there, and that's it. That's what we get there. Which I guess is we'll have to figure it out later. But I guess that's the kill that he needed, which we'll find out later is important. That killing this guy is what furthers the plot for him.
Yes, he got on the radar of the recruiters. Like, he just needs one more. Who's on? Oh, next one who gets that next kill, we're going for him.
Exactly. And the other thing we get, so we go back to the set of the Never Surrender video where C. Thomas Howell's in bed again with no shirt on and jeans, which is an interesting way to go to sleep. Granted, like when I was a kid, younger than C. Thomas Howell, I could sleep in my jeans, right? Like, hanging out with friends or whatever, and you're right up, high school, you sleep, it's like, oh, I'm sleeping in my jeans. As an adult, it's like if I take a nap and I've got my jeans on, I'm like, this isn't working. I've got to change to pajama pants or something. But he does. He's, the shirt is too much, right? He can't sleep with a shirt on, but jeans are perfectly fine. And I think he also keeps the belt on a lot of times too when he's sleeping.
Oh, yeah, that's not good.
No. And the other thing too is we get a sense of where PM puts their budget for things, because most movies, right, C. Thomas Howell the next day would be in the police station and he'd be getting chewed out by his chief or sergeant or whatever there. It'd be like kind of a messy office with like, files and everything all over the place, maybe a picture of the wife and kids, and then there'd be this guy, with a mustache and a messy shirt and everything yelling at him. Well, instead they go with the answering machine approach. So the chief just chews him out in the middle of the night on his answering machine, which must have saved them some money so they could do another chase scene.
Right. Yeah, they didn't want to build the police station set this time.
So, and I think it's a good, I think it's, if you're going to put the money into one thing or another, I think if it was,
I'd rather have a chase scene than a police precinct.
Yeah, exactly. So, so next up, we go into we go to the mall the next day. This is an interesting sequence because this is the mall that was used in Rage.
Yes.
Yeah, and so there's almost a sense of like, hey, what do you guys think? Maybe it's the what something might happen here. And as PM fans, right, you kind of get your hopes up a little bit, like, oh, something might happen here. And at least you have to trust Spiro Razatos that when something doesn't happen there, that he's going to get you back later. He's going to take care of you later. But it's almost like a reminder of like, hey, I'm the guy who did that scene here. Just trust me.
Do you remember what was at that mall? Was the All PM Entertainment video store?
Oh, yes, yes, which we unfortunately don't see in this one, right? Because I think
Oh,
they
I
just go to the
know.
camera place
Yeah.
and yeah, which I mean, Gary Daniels was just throwing stuntmen through the windows of that
Yeah, the
all
PM.
PM.
Could you,
Yeah.
do you know? I would probably just die right then and there if I walked into a mall. Which, if there are any left, there are. But if I walked into a mall and there was a PM Entertainment video store, shit,
Yeah.
my God,
Oh, I mean, just those posters. Like I'd probably get like kind of dizzy. I might even pass out just like
that's yeah.
walking. You see all those posters around you, and it's just like, oh, like yeah, it just too much. Yeah. So we don't.
It'd be glorious. It would be a glorious trip. Oh,
Yes,
I
it
want it
would
to
be.
happen now.
I know, I know. It is kind of a shame because they don't do as much with the mall here. I mean, here it's just simply they go to a photo place and for whatever reason, this guy who is like so he's a pedophile he's married a woman who has a young daughter who's like 6 years old, and he decides he's going to take pictures of her and you know get
Uh,
them developed at the 1 hour photo mat in the
right.
mall. So which it didn't seem to think there'd be any issues with that. And of course, he gets confronted by the police officers. The other thing I was thinking, but too, is see Thomas Howell at that mall. I bet you the Spencer's Gifts is where he picked up that House of Pain hat.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Now the one mall up here still does have the good old Spencer's Gifts, but I wonder if they have House of Pain. I might if I go next time. I'll check. You got any House of Pain hats? You got any? Is that like retro enough now that it's cool to have here? I don't know.
Yeah, I was thinking because like they would have like House of Pain, like I think like basketball jerseys or like stuff like that. And
Yeah.
I was showing, I don't know if you watch baseball where they have those City Connect jerseys now with the baseball teams. And the White Sox one that says South Side, it looks like if you were getting like a House of Pain or like Seven Dust or something shirt at Spencer's. It's like that. Yeah, it was, yeah, it's a shame because we don't get enough of that in the mall. What we get is they confront this guy, he gives them some lip, and C. Thomas Howell smashes his head into one of the big stone pillars that holds up the second floor of the mall.
Right.
Uh, and then, of course, his partner says, "Hey, we're going to let this guy go due to police brutality," which I don't know that that makes any sense. I don't think that's how it works.
Right.
Like, oh, we could have let the pedophile keep being a pedophile because you broke his nose. Like
Right.
yeah, but this PM world, right? In PM world, criminals get off because of police brutality.
Right. That's why we need the JI that we're going to get into. But yeah, I
Well,
mean, obviously him being a father makes it even more of a, who wants to have a pedophile anywhere anyway? But I mean, he's a dad. He's got a kid, so that makes it even more personal for him.
yeah,
Uh, yeah, that actually recently we did a Don the Dragon Wilson episode on my show, and uh, we were either going to do Blood Fist 3 or what the hell did we end up doing? Black Belt.
yeah,
I didn't want to do Blood Fist 3 because I'm like, isn't that the one where they make the pedophile like a good guy? I'm not doing that.
right, right. Well,
But
because
then
right,
Black Belt was weird too because the mom was. I'm like, oh, all these movies are dark, just
yeah,
too dark.
yeah, because it's like this idea in Blood Fist 3 where it's like he somehow gets control over himself or something,
Yeah,
and then he gets
he's
killed. It was
yeah,
like, yeah, I mean, I guess the only thing was that like was like Don the Dragon Wilson was such a pariah in the prison that he could only be friends with the pedophile, but that
yeah,
was still like, you're right. It was like the whole thing was weird. It's
yeah.
yeah.
It's like, I'm like, I don't want to talk about a movie where a good guy is a pedophile. No, we're not
Right.
doing that one.
No, exactly. Yeah. It's one of the things about these kind, I mean, it's one of the things about this movie, I think, and some of the, the good, I mean, other than the fact that the family gets blown away at the beginning, which if you're, you're watching with mixed, audience, if you've got friends who aren't as big into this kind of movie, they might be like, huh, this is a little dark. And you just gotta like, okay, no, just
Yeah,
bear
isn't
with
that
us here.
sad? I didn't even know. Like, that was fine. Whatever.
Exactly. But
Families get slaughtered every day. Let it go.
exactly, especially in PM world. But yeah, this one for the most part doesn't really have anything like that. Like you said, I mean, like obviously, like in this case, right? The guy who's supposed to be and the thing is, even with the fact that the guy is a pedophile, they don't really. It's just like they don't show anything. It's just like they're looking at they're going through the pictures, but we don't see anything. But also, it's kind of like it's kind of like it's a quick thing where it's just like it's one of those things that makes you go like Mark Goddard's the kind of guy that like we can really get behind, even if
Right.
he's breaking some eggs, but he's making some omelets.
Right.
So, now speaking of breakfast foods, after this incident, he goes to a bar that's a police officer's bar and has some drinks. And young Cinda Williams is there, playing the character of Diane. And she talks with him, starts to kind of strike up a conversation, asks if he wants to get high. He's like, "Well, what are you talking about? I'm a police officer." She's like, "I kind of know what the kind of police officer you are is." And they go back to her place and they're getting baked. And she goes off on this huge soliloquy about honey. Was it honeycombs? Am I thinking
Yes,
honey?
post honeycomb cereal.
Yeah, which I don't know. I mean, if you're the makers of honeycomb cereal, I don't know if this is good advertising or not. I mean, 'cause I don't know that I necessarily was like, oh, I need to go out and get a box of that and try it again because I haven't had it in forever. But it's just completely out of nowhere. And C. Thomas Howell's just sitting there with his like big hair and his goatee and his ripped jeans, smoking a joint, like listening to her. And at one point she says to him, like, "Hey, if you can do the theme song from the commercial, I'll give you a blowjob." And he goes, I do what now? You do what now? So, and then he starts talking in kind of like some light ebonics, not anything like to the Steven Seagal level that we were, speaking of Steven Seagal. It's nothing great, but he's like, I know them shits. I'll sing them shits, whatever. He says it kind of like that. And
Yeah.
just as he's about to hook up, probably the biggest buzzkill that you could get. I mean, I think for me, if I was ever hooking up with a young lady, this could be the worst thing that would probably happen to me. But one of the worst things, and that is Ed Lauter shows up and just sort of puts the kibosh on the whole thing.
He does, but I want to say that if that deal would have gone through, every man who was watching this movie would have the post honeycomb cereal jingle committed to memory in the event they found themselves in the same situation.
Yeah, and not only that, but especially everybody who lived outside of LA, right? If you knew you were going to LA for
Oh
anything,
yeah,
going to Disney World or whatever, just in case, right? You found
right,
yourself because I think for people when you're outside of LA, you just think all these things can happen in LA, and
right.
it just makes sense.
I would have, but yeah, you get Ed Lauter. I mean, let's talk about Ed Lauter from the greatest movie that has ever been made, Death Wish 3.
Yes.
Ed Lauter referred to himself not as a character actor, but as a turn actor, because when he shows up, things turn. And this is an awesome example of that. That man knew what he
Yes.
was talking about because we're about to see a blowjob, and instead we get a job offer, and it's Ed Lauter. What I loved when Ed Lauter pops up in anything. But I bet C. Thomas Howell didn't, or at least Mark Goddard didn't at this time.
Right. No, well, because the one way to get someone to not trust you, right, is to walk in when they're about to get a blowjob for knowing the theme song to the Honeycombs commercial, and so rightfully, right, he doesn't trust Ed Lauter, but like I agree with you there that like I can't think of anybody else who would have been better for this part, especially the way he comes into the film.
Yeah, he's good. He plays Donald Moles, or aka the cock blocker. Um, and yeah, he's there, and he's like, "Hey, we've got a group with secret federal funding, and it's known as the JI. We want you in the JI." And for those of you not in the know, that's Justice Incorporated.
And they don't tell you. So the next day he goes to a party. We I have to quickly say we get this great inside LA joke that I don't think would matter to anybody else in the world. And that is when C. Thomas Howell's like, well, you got to get yourself a party here or something like that. And Ed Lauter's like, what, they don't have parties south of Sunset? And I was like, I don't even know what, I thought it meant that like maybe like the poorer people live south of Sunset, but no, I think it's actually where the city is. And like north of Sunset is like the hills and all the, fancy places. From PM's standpoint, when they write a script, they don't care if they're doing inside LA jokes, right? Like they don't care if the rest of us don't get the joke because they know what's coming, right? Like they
Right.
know what we're getting. So we get that. Yeah, then we find out, right, like you said, about Justice Incorporated. Ed Lauter brings him into another room where a couple other character actors are and explains to them, like, yeah, when you hung that guy the other day, that was your ninth kill. And we've got people all over the country. They mentioned a bunch of cities here in the US, Detroit, Philly, Boston, Chicago, of course. You got to have Chicago in there.
Right.
And they're just keeping an eye on the records to see who's got 9 kills. And once you get that 9, we invite you here to this fancy mansion. And of course, Mark Goddard thinks they're putting him on. Like who would have a party? I mean, he spent his entire life in the force getting crap from his chief in the middle of the night on his answering machine for killing people. He doesn't think that there's like any kind of benefit to it. And so they want to show them that they're serious about this. And again, this is PM, like you said, not like Blood Fist 3. PM's going to show you that, hey, we're going to get you some justice for that pedophile in the previous scene. And he just happens to be tied up in another room. And, Ed Lauter's like, hey, at Justice Incorporated, these are the kind of dividends that we get paid. And he's like, these are the stock options that we've got here. And he just kills him.
Yeah, no, you don't have to worry about legal things and warrants and judges and juries and none of that. None of that pesky legal system that just hampers everything. We just take care of business right here.
Yeah. Yeah. And so the funny thing is we kind of leave, it seems like we leave with C. Thomas Howell, like not wanting to join, right? Like
Right.
he's skeptical. But the next day he's in a cab rolling up to the hills in this fancy mansion. And I can't even imagine what that cab ride would have cost him if he's living south of Sunset and this thing's way up there. But hey, that's it's with Justin Incorporated, they can cover the cab fare.
Oh yeah, he handed him that big wad of money. I mean, that was like he's living large now. And of course, we should mention that Felton Perry was one of the JI guys.
Oh yes,
of RoboCop fame. And I think he was maybe in the original Walking Tall.
I think you're right. Magnum Force. He was in Magnum Force in '73 as well. Yeah, like the RoboCops. Let's see here. Yeah, I think you're right though, because yeah, I mean, like you recognize him right away. He's just let's see if he was.
He wasn't Johnson in this one, but he was good.
Oh yeah, he was. Yep, he was in the original Walking Tall. Yeah, in '73. Then he went on and did some episodes of shows like Macmillan and Wife and Mannix and Police Story, kind of all the usual suspects. Barnaby Jones. He hit all of them. He would have been perfect for our '70s guy, but they had other plans for him in this. So he's in the mansion, and it just happens that Ed Lauter is there with Rachel Gill, who's played by Kristen Dalton. She's a woman who has been hanging out with Ed Lauter. Mark Goddard doesn't really know who she is yet. We find out later that she also has her 9 confirmed kills. So she was actually ahead of C. Thomas Howell.
That's right.
We don't know what city she's in, but you had to figure she was probably on their radar even before that, maybe. But hey, she's got the kills, she's in good to go. But they're there and they're telling C. Thomas Howell who his first kill is going to be. And I'm trying to figure out if this gang was called the Concrete Lion or the Concrete Line.
Yeah, I didn't pick up on that either which way. So, right. I mean, the line I get. I don't know. It's a great question.
Right.
That I have no answer to.
Yeah, so it's this drug dealing operation. It's run by John St. Ryan with his mustache and his balding head. He's the only one who really knows what he's doing in this group, from what you can tell. I guess there's one guy who's underneath him who has I guess is okay, knows enough. But for the most part, these guys are kind of either bumbling, morons. I can't remember, what did he say about the one guy who wanted to go down to Mexico for something? I can't remember what he said about. He made some kind of joke about him being an ignoramus. I can't remember what it was, but and the other guy's high, and so it's like one of those kind of deals. But there's this one guy who's kind of running the lab, right? That makes the crack or whatever. And so I mean, these movies usually have to have a lab, right? You got to have a lab that makes stuff. And so this is C. Thomas Howell's first job. So he's got to go and somehow work his way into this group and take everybody out in the lab. So he kind of bumbles his way in. He breaks some vials on things and stuff like that. But he's there to, he's got his money. He's there. He's gonna buy the drugs, and they're suspicious of him. He's got his goatee and he's kind of acting foolish. But they want the money, so they're okay with it. And then they realize, like, no, this guy's not good. Fortunately, he's able to take a gun off of somebody else, one of the guys there, and he starts shooting people up. And you think that's going to be it. But one of the things about PM movies, it's kind of like Fast and Furious, right? With like The Rock, where he's like, don't let them get into cars, and talking about like Vin Diesel and all of them. In a PM movie, it's kind of the opposite. It's like, please get into cars.
Right. We need you in the car because we got something cooking up, and it's not crack for school kids. We got something else cooking up.
Exactly. I forgot about that. That's like the big line, is that they can't wait to sell their crack to school kids, like the concrete line.
And did you notice when he's there? And I don't think I picked up on this when I first watched it. But this rewatch, it's daylight. Like, it is pure. It's middle of the freaking day, not dusk, not any of that. It is bright as hell outside. Yes. One of the guys gets away from this Mark Goddard. But he must run for a long, long time. His car must have been parked south of Sunset or north of Sunset. I don't know where he was parked, but he was parked a far-ass way, because by the time he gets there, it's night.
Right. And it's not just night, it's dark night.
Oh, yeah, it is pitch black, 2 o'clock in the GD morning.
Yeah. And again, this is PM, right? This is PM saying to you, hey, we know it just went from noon to 2 in the morning in one scene. We know it did that, but we got something cooking for you.
Yeah.
We're about to give you something here. You're just trust us here. And so you do have to trust them on it, but you're right. It's like I mean, that building had to be so big that they were just running for hours to get out of there.
And I think they've used that building before, because I'm like, I thought it was at night though, and like somebody went out that window, but maybe I'm thinking it's like Zero Tolerance or something. Maybe I don't know if it was that building or not.
Right. Or I was trying to think too if it was the one. It wouldn't have been like the oversized warehouse in the opening scene of Recoil, right? Where they're just driving around forever.
You want to talk about some Spiro Razatos and that thing.
Yes.
That is one of the greatest things I've ever seen. When they get out of that warehouse and that car goes airborne and hits the traffic light, that is one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah. Yeah, and what's coming up here, I think it's got to be another. Is just this chase scene coming up here is just amazing. So the bad guy gets in his car and drives off, and C. Thomas Howell gets in a car and is chasing after him. And you've got your classic chase scene, kind of, whatever, go up until this point, right? It's just your usual, weaving through cars, smashing into cars, knocking, spinning people out. You got poor people that are like just running errands, or maybe going away for the weekend or something, who suddenly get T-boned or whatever. It's kind of just your usual chase scene here, and then the baddie pulls up next to a truck that is carrying a whole bunch of oxygen tanks, I guess they are.
Yeah, some sort of gas in those pressurized cylinders.
And he gets a crazy Grinchy idea that maybe I'll just pull up a little bit past them, pull out my Uzi, and shoot the straps that are holding these tanks in place.
Right, since Uzis are known for their precision shots.
Yes.
They're not just there to spray bullets. You use those for like marksmanship.
Right. Well, the best part is that, like, yeah, he's firing the Uzi. He doesn't hit any of the tanks. He just hits the
Right.
straps, and then they
He's
just
very
start.
good. I mean, he's very good,
Yeah,
obviously.
right. The only way that C. Thomas Howell is actually able to get him is that eventually he runs out of bullets, and he's got to, it's hard to do a reload with an Uzi when you got to keep a hand on the steering wheel. I don't know if you use your forehead to smash in the clip. It's not an easy thing to do. But before we get there, right, we've got C. Thomas Howell giving chase, and the guy starts firing at these oxygen tanks that are in the road, and they just start exploding everywhere.
It's great.
Yeah,
Oh God. Like this one, I remember the first time I was like, at first you're like, okay, yeah, they had that cool chick. And again, you're wondering, like, man, did they waste all their stuff at the beginning? Because
right.
now it's just like, okay, yeah, he's a crazy cop beating up people, whatever. And then this happens and the cylinders are exploding, and I'm like, oh my God, is this a wonderful film that I'll be watching again, I'm sure.
Yeah. Look, and it's like it's not just that the tanks are exploding, right? Because the tanks are exploding, which is fantastic. And then on top of the tanks exploding, they're blowing up the pace cars.
Of
So you've got
course.
cars blowing up, and here's Mark Goddard, here's C. Thomas Howell weaving around them as these explosions are happening. So you get this fantasticness. You've got a sign on the right side of the road telling us that the Pacific Coast Highway is the next 5 exits. Nobody's getting off on these exits, right? We are, I guess if you're a pace car, you can try to escape one of those exits, but C. Thomas Howell has no plans on using any of those exits. And so after we get these explosions here, he gets a crazy, cringy idea of his own. Uh, he notices that one of these tanks is kind of just hanging off the side of this truck here. And he thinks, maybe I can just kind of ease my car next to it and get it to kind of land on my hood ever so nice, kind of in that little crook between the windshield and the hood. Um,
Mhm.
which that's what that's there for. That's why it comes up just a little bit, right? When you close your hood, it's kind of just up high enough so that you can hold a nice gas tank there. And he gets his window right when again our baddie he has to reload his Uzi, which again he wasted all his Uzi bullets on on these tanks. It should have worked, right? If it wasn't Mark Goddard, it probably would have worked. But he's got to reload, and so that gives him his one chance. So he just kind of drives as quickly as he can, smashes into the back of the car, which sends the tank flying into the front seat, lands right in the front seat right next to him. And a guy knows exactly what's going to happen to him here too when he sees that tank sitting next to him in the passenger seat. I think he's even like, "Oh shit," or something like that. And then, I can't remember if C. Thomas Howell says anything when he blows him up, or if he just shoots at it and it blows up.
I think he just shoots, but yeah, it was a very like almost Looney Tune ish where that tank is in the next to him, and it's like, yeah, Wile E. Coyote knows exactly what's about to happen to him.
Exactly. And unlike the Looney Tunes, right, where Wile E. Coyote would just turn into dust, like he would just been all black and charred and then just fell apart as dust. And this, the car just exploded. I think it flipped, didn't it? Did it flip over something when
Of
it blew
course, it
up?
has
Or
to flip.
right?
The hell, PM world, these cars flip. There's like could be like a stick in the road, and it would cause the car to flip over.
Right.
You want to blow the damn thing up? Of course, it's gonna flip.
Yeah, and we get it's like the perfect ending. I mean, I can't imagine how much honeycomb cereal Spiro Razatos was on when he conceived of this sequence, but it's just so fantastic.
Yeah, it's. I mean, you could see why he then got these big time movie jobs because I mean, the man is a genius, and
Yeah.
it's like they're probably like, "You did that on what budget? Oh hell, we got 50 times that over here. Come on."
Yes. Yeah. It's just like, okay, all right, let's just do, or Paul Walker just running up a bus or whatever the stuff is that they did. It's like, okay, yeah. Once he's done it, once you've seen it in PM, you're just like, okay, yeah, it's like let's just give him all the honeycomb he wants, so we can come up with the craziest sequences as he's got here. Um, so yeah, so I guess we've got one of the concrete lion is dead, right? This is what it took to get one of the concrete lion to knock him out. But he's there, he's dead. So At this point, I think it's between this and his next sequence where he's got to go down to Mexico to take out the other guy that is going to Mexico. I think that's when he gives Janet Gunn some money, so she can open her fish restaurant.
Yes, he takes the money he received from his new sweet JI gig, and you can make your dreams come true, honey.
Yes. And I love that to this point we only ever see her in like the hostess outfit for the
Yeah,
restaurant.
she may have been moonlighting. She may have been actually working at a restaurant, and she would just quickly rush over to the set to do her scenes.
Right.
And then she had to get back for her shift.
Exactly. With the bow tie, right? Like that was, yeah, so she's waiting tables at a restaurant on Sunset, perhaps. I don't,
Hmm.
yeah. And so yeah. Yeah, because I was trying to think, yeah, with Janet Gunn, that's a good point, because it actually might have been the case. I don't know if she might have actually been, because this was before she got silk stockings. So yeah, with PM you never know, right? I mean, it's always a very distinct possibility that these actors could be, yeah, between scenes, or even too, like it could have been that like she was working as the waitress, and then they call her and they're like, hey, can you do your scene with C. Thomas Howell now, because it actually works out better if you can shoot it now. Okay, I gotta get away from work, is it okay if I'm in my outfit? We're gonna say you own a restaurant, so that's fine.
Or they just didn't. They had no more money for wardrobe, and they're just like, oh well, yeah, we had that one scene with you in the. Okay, well, yeah, just keep wearing that
Right.
because Spiro just spent another. We had to flip that car, uh, so we lost your wardrobe money. So unless you want to bring something of your own, but that's just yeah. I don't.
Just wear, yeah, just wear it. And she does, and she's a little upset that he's giving her this money. She thinks, okay, maybe this is it, he's actually going to die. She's like, your luck's going to run out
Right.
at some point, but
Yeah.
we know there's still plenty of movie left, and so he's got some time left. But he goes down to Mexico with Rachel Gill, Kristen Dalton, and there's a sense that like she wants to hook up with him, because why wouldn't she? I mean, he's House of Pain hat, goatee, ripped
Right.
jeans, black vest. I mean, what lady isn't?
Yeah. Yeah, he protested her going on this thing with him for about 6 minutes, I think. I think
Right,
I put that in my review that at 59:56 he objects to her being there,
right,
and at 1:05 they were together in the shower.
right, exactly. Well,
So
because he
there you go. 6 minutes is a long time in movie land.
right, for him to reconsider, because it's like he's like, I don't want her coming, and Ed Lauter's like, hey, she's got the 9 kills too. So he had to it was like that realization for him, like, oh, she's been doing this longer than me, and so
Mhm.
she had 9 kills before I had 9 kills, and she's like 5 years younger than me, so she's like, killing people more than I am.
Right, she's a prodigy.
Right, exactly. And so, yeah, when they get down to Mexico, they've got some time to kill before they do their big bust. And she just says outright, the language she uses for this is fantastic. She's like, "Do you want to make love?"
Mm,
You know,
yeah.
yeah,
I
which
wouldn't. Yeah, that's not what they'd be doing. They don't love each other.
exactly. It's like, what is it, like the match game, right? You want to make whoopee or something? It's like, like that's that's the language. But he's like, he kind of says no, kind of not. It's like a weird no, but he's like just sitting there again with his House of Pain hat on, and just like with loading his gun or cleaning his gun or whatever, whatever he does. And she's like, okay, I'm gonna go take a
That's not a
shower.
euphemism, by the
Right,
way. He
exactly.
was
No.
actually cleaning his gun.
He was right, because she gets down to her underwear. She's like in her bra and panties, just
Right,
kind of
which would
standing
make you
there.
think maybe he was cleaning his gun, but no, he was cleaning his gun.
Right. It could have been like an Iranian film where they were like, well, it's too gross if we actually have him, quote, cleaning his gun, close quote. So let's have him cleaning his gun as a reference, like in, the Iranian films where it's like always like you can't have people having sex in the movie. So you just do like, references to it, or allusions to it. I guess I didn't really think of it, but that's actually makes more sense that it's sort of like, yeah, kind of an illusion. But when she decides she's going to take a shower, he decides, you know what, that's it. I
Yeah,
can't hold
I
off
stink
anymore.
too. I stink too. I may as well hop in there with her.
Right, exactly. And I can say the one thing with him having the goatee, because it's like a very bushy goatee,
Yeah.
is like when he's like making out with her, it looks like, whenever people show videos of like Australia with these kind of big hairy spiders and things like that are there, it's like it's almost like this hairy insect is like attacking her or something.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to. Well, I'm not going to say it, but you never know. Maybe she had a goatee somewhere as well. We don't
It's
know. We
possible.
didn't. We didn't see all that.
That's a good point. That's a good point because this is your classic what I always call a B&B love scene or boobs and butt love scene where
Right.
it's like you don't get anything beyond that. It's a and this is like this is like what you'd get like what every 10 minutes in a Sedaris movie. This does it the other way around, right? Where it's like
Right.
you get one or two of these in the movie.
Yes, they had a little bit more shame at PM Entertainment than Mr.
Right.
Sedaris.
Exactly. Exactly. So yeah, now they go kind of across the way. So this is an interesting Mexico, right? Because this is the same Mexico that we get, I think, in Zero Tolerance. It's
Yeah.
just, a dirt road in California that goes to like a swinging gate that, like you're going to a parking garage or something. That's the border. And then essentially the town in Mexico is just like a Western set that they just adorned with, stuff from a Mexican restaurant to make it more Mexico.
Maybe Janet brought it. Maybe she worked at a Mexican
Exactly.
restaurant. She's like, I could bring you some props.
Right. With the bow tie does kind of lend itself to potentially to like the bartender maybe at the Mexican, like she's
Yeah.
yeah, it's like I can't make any more
Just make it
margaritas.
right.
And so there's like a mansion or something across the street from where their hotel is in this, that's like otherwise like Western town. There's this like fancy mansion place, and that's where the drug deal is happening. So to get in, because the security is very tight in this place, right? You've got, guys in black suits with Uzis manning the facilities or the building, or the compound, I guess, compound. So, it's really difficult to get in. So what they do to sneak in, because it's a really elaborate scheme that they need to do to get in. We've got our lady friend here, Rachel Gill. She like kind of distracts the guard while C. Thomas Howell climbs over the bars and jumps down, and that's it. That's
Yep.
it. They're in.
That's all it takes. Sometimes the best plans are the simplest plans.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
can overplan and overthink it, and you'll never get anywhere in life.
Yeah, and then this is it. This is they start just taking people out. They're just going around shooting people all over the place. I mean, there's one point where it's almost like C. Thomas Howell's like coming out of the ivy at Wrigley Field, where he just like falls out of a bush and starts shooting people. Um, but I mean, you see a pool and you like, okay, well, somebody's going in that pool. There's a guy on a roof. Well, somebody's falling off that roof. I mean, you just every time any possible way you can have a shooting death in a scene, Spiro Razatos makes sure we get them.
The man is a national treasure to the action community, and he should have a he should get a they should have an Oscar for him at this point. I mean, come on.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, because we talked. I was a previous episode. I had Todd Liebenow from Forgotten Filmcast on. He was talking about that, like having an Oscar for the action, or for his stunt work in movies.
Right.
And I mean, yeah, if anybody would deserves like a
A
lifetime
lifetime
achievement.
achievement. Yep.
Yeah,
He's the man. Bring him
yeah,
out.
yeah. I mean, Spiro Rosatos, and I mean, this is like maybe like the fifth best action sequence in this movie, and like it is probably like for most movies this would be like the second or third. This would be like even like Recoil, which has so many fantastic sequences. Like this is like kind of like almost like a get me over version of the party sequence in Recoil, where Daniels infiltrates the party sequence, and he shoots some people and stuff like that. Like I think that one was supposed to have a bigger punch than it ended up having, because it just, I don't know, for me, I guess it didn't have as much to it. I wanted more like Daniels beating people up and stuff like that. But this one here, it was just kind of like, hey, we're just going to go in here and just start shooting people up, and it worked for even as simple as it was.
It did, and it's another successful mission for the JI.
Yes, yeah. So
They
somebody,
can't be stopped. They're really cleaning up things.
Yeah. And I just realized on my notes that I actually have concrete line and concrete lion written in two different places. So I couldn't even decide myself like what the name was. But yeah, so the concrete line realizes after this that boy, they're in trouble, right? Like, somebody's taken out their guys. And our bemustachioed villain decides to shut it all down. So he kills his second in command. And he's getting ready to wrap things up when C. Thomas Howell just happens to show up. And actually, before he shows up, we find out that he had confessed to Rachel that he wants out of JI. And of course, Ed Lauter's like, well, we can't let that happen, right? Not
Right.
at least not without a huge action sequence at the end of the movie. But at the very least, we shouldn't allow this to happen. So C. Thomas Howell confronts the baddie at the concrete line after he's killed his buddy, and so when he's with his second in command, they have a drink, right, to kind of finish things off. And when C. Thomas Howell shows up, he notices that the guy who was killed dropped his drink, and there's alcohol on the floor. So he gets a crazy Grinchy idea, right? That like, instead of just shooting him, what if I put my cigarette out in the alcohol and it runs a trail of fire all the way up to this guy and sets him on fire? Yeah,
Beautiful.
and so
Burn, baby, burn.
right, and so now from Spiro Razatos, we know from Maniac Cop 2 that Spiro Razatos likes doesn't just want guys on fire. He wants them coming out of windows, right? He wants them crashing through windows when they're on fire. And we're on the second story here, so why not? And C. Thomas Howell realizes this too. He's like, "Oh man, I just set somebody on fire in a Spiro Razatos movie. I need to get out of the way." And sure enough, the guy charges him. They crash through the window. The first C. Thomas Howell crashes through the window, and he lands through a van. Um, and then he knows, right, that if this flaming guy crashes through this van too, we're going to be in trouble. So he gets out the back of the van. He's like limping down the street when our baddie comes flying through, lands in the van, and the van blows up. Because that's what has to happen.
Exactly. It's just like the flipping law. I mean, cars have to blow up, especially when
Yeah.
there's a fire anywhere near. But I mean, yeah, it had to blow up.
Yeah. Yeah. And so and we get probably one of the best lines of the movie when C. Thomas Howell comes back to see Ed Lauter to tell him how the mission went. He goes like, I can't remember what he says, like, what were you doing? Or what have you been up to? I was barbecuing. Or was that what it is? Or I was at a barbecue or something. I can't.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
believe so.
Yeah. And so there's a sense now that okay, there's some tension between Lauter and C. Thomas Howell. One of the things was that Lauter had promised that he would give him the guys that killed
Right.
Howell's family, and he's just
Mhm.
not really coming good with the goods on that one.
Yeah, that was like the big selling point for him, obviously, because that's something he's carried with him now for years and years and years, and this chance for vengeance for the ones who killed his family is what kind of blinded him to taking this rather bizarre job with the JI. So when that doesn't turn out well, this is the part that really breaks my heart because you don't you don't want your Ed Lauter to be a bad guy, but he's a bad guy.
Yeah, it was one of those things like you were just hoping beyond hope that maybe, just maybe, we could get through this movie with him not turning into a bad guy.
Yeah, but was not the case.
No. So he gets another mission, and this time he and Rachel are with these kind of two schlubby guys, but everybody's dressed in black suits with sunglasses. And I guess even schlubby guys look cool, right? With black suits and sunglasses and machine guns. And they go to this underground casino that looks like cops are playing. The only reason why we think they're cops is because his dad's friend from C. Thomas
Right.
Howell's dad's friend from the first scene is in that one. He's at the casino playing games and stuff like that. And so they start blowing these guys away. And then C. Thomas Howell recognizes his dad's friend from early in the movie, which I mean, he's aged pretty well for 15 years.
Yeah.
He's yeah. I guess doesn't look too bad, and so and the best part is that he recognizes Mark. So he must have seen him somewhat recently.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
They probably kept in touch.
yeah, yeah. And he says to him like, "Oh, he should have been a dentist," because that was a callback to the very first scene where they're in the car and he said he wants to be a cop, and the dad's friend's like, "Ah, you'd be better off being a dentist." And Yes, maybe C. Thomas Howell's character, Goddard, he would have been better being a dentist, but would we have been better for him being a dentist?
No, absolutely not. Who'd want to watch a movie about Mark Goddard the dentist?
Exactly. Yeah, he's not blowing up those nitrous gas tanks that are falling off the back of a truck. That's just, yeah, we're not getting any of the awesome we get there. So he tries to get the guys to stop shooting. They're like, hey, why don't we just kill C. Thomas Howell? Because I think that's probably what they were supposed to do anyway. He blows those two guys away, but he doesn't kill Rachel. But he lets Rachel know, hey, I'm coming for Lauter. It's time. And that's when Spiro Razatos shows up and says, it's kind of like, okay, well, what are you going to do, Mr. Razatos? To get the pier sequence. We got the foot chase with the hanging. We've got the exploding gas tanks chase scene. We got the flaming guy getting blown up and blowing up a van. What are you going to do for us here? What's going on here? And he's like, I got you guys. I got you. It a fantastic chase scene to end the movie where C. Thomas Howell, he goes in, he goes to Ed Lauter's house and he starts shooting up everybody there at Ed Lauter's house. So I mean, a movie like this with a hero, he's got to end on some kind of killing spree anyway, right? Like he's, we need a lot of murders, but yeah, Ed Lauter escapes in a car. It's again just like Fast and the Furious, we want people to get into cars. Like we need people to get into cars. And that's when we get this chase sequence. They say it's on the 103, which is like it's like it's like, I don't know, like Terminal Island in Los Angeles. It's sort of like an industrial. It's like the highway's not really that big. I looked it up because I was curious, like what the 103 is in LA, and it's not a very big stretch, but that's where the chase scene is going on, and it's sort of like the previous chase scene where it seems like your average regular chase scene. I mean, you get situations like this poor family that's taking their boat out on the trip, and next thing you know, they're flipping through like a flaming car and it's blowing up, and you're upside down in a flaming car and your boat's destroyed, and it's like, man, there goes your weekend. It's you're getting a lot of that kind of stuff. I mean, but it is the chase, right? That is fantastic, and next thing you know, there's like this stunt plane flying overhead, and it's like something out of like, I don't know, like some kid's movie or something. I don't know what Snoopy and the Red Baron or something.
Right.
Yeah. And Ed Lauter's like, hey, land that thing on the 103. I need to get in that plane. And so they come across, like, what was it? A big tanker, I think, right?
Yes.
Right. And so we know what's going to happen with a tanker. We've all seen Rage. We know how this ends with when Spiro Razatos gets his hand on an oil tanker. We know how that's going to go. But what's great is, well, you've got these cars. Because actually, doesn't the boat car crash through the oil tanker?
Yes, it does. Yeah, the oil tanker, is going to be crashed through, flipped over. You're going to know that oil tanker is going to get its use.
Yeah.
And you know what? Some of it may have been the footage from Rage. I'm not sure.
Yes.
It may have been some recycling there, but I would never have predicted a biplane, but bless you, Spiro Razatos, for incorporating something that no human being on Earth would have predicted into your film.
Yeah, and the other thing is that C. Thomas Howell's driving through all of this mess, and he realizes, like, well, the only way for me to get past this oil tanker is to smash the roof of my car. And it turned out that it ended up coming in handy for him, right? Because again, like you said, nobody expects a biplane, but hey, I just happen to have no roof on my car here. That works out perfectly.
He was very excited that he had a convertible all of a sudden.
Exactly. Now, the other thing is that Ed Lauter, when the plane lands, Ed Lauter gets out of his car and he jumps into this plane and he puts on like an old timey football helmet.
Yeah, he had like the Red Baron hole. He just didn't have the scarf. He needed the. So I guess that was just in the plane for whoever happened to jump in there.
Right, exactly. Like, hey, those are aviation regulations that if you're flying a biplane, you need to have at least two old-timey NFL helmets.
Yeah, a leather helmet. That'll help you. Some goggles on, too, and a scarf so it blows in the wind.
Exactly. And so, this guy who's flying this plane is like, okay, Ed Lauter made me land on the 103. Now he wants me to take off. And C. Thomas Howell's like, hey, I've got a convertible now. Actually, this is going to work out well for me. And with it being a biplane, it can't retract the wheels. So you've got this hangy thing there that you can grab onto perfectly. And the thing I love about this is like C. Thomas Howell, he's got the goatee, and he's just like gritting and like grimacing as he's holding on to this wheel, just making these fantastic faces the whole time. And what's going to happen here? He's got to climb. He's got to, we kind of have a sense of what's going on here, right? That he's just going to climb his way up the wheel to get onto the wing, and then he's going to, pull Ed Lauter out. Though what happens is that Ed Lauter is in the perfect position, right, by being in a seat. And he gives up that perfect position by getting out of the seat and confronting C. Thomas Howell on the wing, which I feel like, especially if I'm Ed Lauter and I'm giving up about like 20 years and, however many pounds to C. Thomas Howell, maybe I just keep my advantage of being in the seat. But no, he's got to get out there and confront him.
That's ego. That was all ego right there.
Yeah, and you got this plane that's just kind of flying over like water, and it's kind of going over different areas, while we're seeing these stuntmen just hanging off of there. It's like for all of you kids out there who heard about how great Tom Cruise was for doing that one stunt in Mission Impossible, yeah, these guys are just doing it. Like they're doing this like 30 years before Tom Cruise was getting credit for it.
Right, get none of the glory. None of the glory.
Yeah, it's just us, right? Us who watched this movie and are just like, this is amazing that you're even doing this.
Yeah, but even we don't know exactly always which stuntman that is. It's just like, oh yeah, the stunt team's awesome. I mean, we know Spiro because Spiro is God, but I mean, we don't know which of who did what to do what. Yeah,
right. Yeah, I've always wondered because Chad Stahelski, obviously he became so famous with the John Wick movies, and then Darren Prescott as well. I mean, like Stahelski, I haven't seen in too many other credits. I mean, Recoil is the one that has both of them with Razatos, and so that's the one I know more, because I see there. And like this one, I didn't recognize any of the other names in this one. But I have a feeling that if we start looking through stunt coordinators of other like action movies that aren't quite as big as the Rosatos ones, if we start to see some of these names pop up, because it's almost like Rosatos just sent his I don't know, not underlings, that's not the right word, his disciples out into the action world.
Well, yeah, you would have, people had to learn from him as they went along, and you got to carry on the tradition, my children.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, a little like John Wick 4, like that sequence at the end when they're like he's going up the stairs to,
Yes.
and he falls all the way down again, and it's just like there's just so much Spiro Razatos energy. I mean, I wonder how many staircases in LA he looked at and said, "Hey, that would be great," and they were just like, "No, we're not, no, just no. We gave you the exploding oxygen tanks, and we gave you the whatever, we're not doing that."
We cut Janet's wardrobe budget for you, damn it.
Right, exactly. We didn't even make a police station. We're just doing answering machine stuff. We're not doing the stairs. Yeah. So Lauter, of course, he meets his demise. We knew how he was going to meet his demise, but actually, what's great is that C. Thomas Howell climbs into Ed Lauter's seat, but he doesn't climb in all the way. He's got kind of like a foot hanging out and stuff, and he's telling the pilot to land the plane. And I guess because you're a cop on the edge, you don't wait till you're fully in your seat to order the person to land the plane. You wait while you're still half in, you order them.
Yeah, and this pilot just listens to anyone. I mean, whoever the last person to give him an order is, he just listens to.
Yes, right. Well, he also knew too that he was by having C. Thomas Howell in the plane without a leather helmet, he was violating regulations. He needed to get the plane landed as soon as possible.
Yeah, because if a FAA plane flew by and noticed that,
right, that's it. No more biplanes for him. No, it's always an interesting thing, because with with Will with Exploding Helicopter, where you've got the exploding helicopters in movies, like the Skyscraper movie with Anna Nicole Smith kind of made me wonder about sort of the I don't know what the right term is. I want to say the ethics behind it, but it's like how many of these pilots are just independent contractors, versus, sometimes you've got these criminal organizations that are so rich that they can have, they've got their own pilots that are their own
Right.
guys, and they're sufficiently bad enough that when they get blown up, it's okay. But these independent contractor ones, you kind of feel like, hey, you're just taking a job. I guess you got to vet those jobs better.
Right. Right, yeah. Like when it's a big time, it's like, oh, he flew helicopters in the war. He's evil mercenary. And he dies. It's like, well, you're an evil mercenary. You got what's coming to you, buddy. But yeah, you do have to feel for these people.
Yeah. Yeah, and this guy's just out having a fun time when Ed Lauter calls him, and I mean, I guess that's the thing is when you're someone who flies stunt planes, you should know who your friends are, because you just never
Mhm.
know who's going to want you to pick them up on the highway because they're into
Yeah,
some shit.
it's worse than the guy who has the truck to help move everything. It's
Exactly.
awful.
Yes, yeah, exactly. You know what? You're the Coyote Waxman of biplane flying. Exactly. So now, unlike, speaking of John Wick, right? In John Wick 2, he kills the guy who, the guy in the high table who's giving him a hard time and everything. And unfortunately for John Wick, he's got 2 movies and roughly 5 hours of torture ahead of him for killing
Yes.
that guy. Luckily, in the PM world, you kill Ed Lauter, and that's it. The rest of JI isn't coming after you. Nobody's giving you a hard time. You get to live happily ever after, and you find out that your wife, your ex-wife, who was off with this other guy, actually, she never really cared about him too much anyway. And she's no longer wearing the waitress outfit. She's gotten something from her own wardrobe that is a little bit more peer friendly,
Right.
for Day on the Pier. And suddenly they're a family again at the end there. And I think, they could leave the door open for a sequel. You could have had some other, maybe like Stephen Williams, also, or even, we could have had our revenge with Felton Perry, right, if he comes back in
Right.
the
He could
sequel,
have,
right?
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, the sequel at PM was rare. It seemed like Don the Dragon somehow got all the sequels.
Yes. Right. Yeah, I'm trying to think, like, other than Don the Dragon, like what other sequels they had. I guess it was him and Lawrence Hilton Jacobs, right? He had
Yeah, he had
those.
the Chance movies, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But everyone
And
else,
that was early on too. That
yeah.
was like he was like one of the early
Right.
founders almost of PM. So they're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, we'll do everything with you, Larry."
Right,
Um,
exactly. That was like that early period. It was just like Lawrence Hilton Jacobs, Wings Hauser, and Lorenzo Lamas. Here, just do whatever you want, and we'll direct it and make it for you. And then it was kind of like, okay, now we've got this Spiro Razatos guy here who we're gonna let him do whatever he wants, and we'll just get whatever actors we get. And so then Wings and Lamas. I guess Lamas still was doing some, I guess, like with the CIA movies, but
yeah,
yeah, Wings and Lawrence Hilton Jacobs, they were on the outs at that point.
right. I think like Lawrence Hilton Jacobs did some small stuff for them. Like he may have been like the ring announcer maybe in Firepower.
Oh, I think you're right. Yes.
So he was there, but yeah, he was no longer the focus. I mean, they had Grizzly Adams for a while too, didn't they?
He did. Yes. Yeah, what was that? Repo Jake, right?
Repo Jake, one of the
Repo Jake.
worst PM movies I've ever seen.
That's right.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
and a lot of those early. I watched a City Lights
Yeah.
film not
Yeah.
too long ago, which was the company prior. That's where Joseph Mary, who was the director of The
Right.
Sweeper, and Richard Pepper, and that's where they first were involved in the movie business. And boy, was that not good either. But you could see a lot of that in the early PM too. It was
Yeah.
like, they hadn't quite found their way. They hadn't
No.
perfected the formula yet.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things I think about this one more than like Rage or Recoil that really shows the formula is like with this one, there's always these moments where you think, maybe the plot's going to get in the way, or this conversation feels like it's going on just a little bit too long. And just when you're starting to think like, how much time's left in this movie? What's going on here? All of a sudden there's a chase scene and it's like, oh, okay,
Right.
I'm
Right.
back.
And that kind of goes, I know that was kind of the canon rule was there was a certain percentage like, okay, we can have this much minutes of story, but we better get right back into the action before too long. So, yeah, and you talked about Recoil. The reason, I mean, that cast is of no, it's like Gary Daniels and a bunch of people that I've never heard of.
Yes.
And you know why? Because the action in that is so crazy. They didn't have money. to pay anybody with any kind of name value in that.
Right, right. The only other person I recognized was Robin Curtis, who was the Lieutenant Savik in who she played Kirstie Alley's role in the third Star Trek movie.
Right.
And then, she was also in Blood Fist 6. She was the major who was sexually harassed by the general that was giving Don the Dragon a hard time. I think he sent a blow up doll to her office, which
Mm.
in the 90s, I guess that was just all in good fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But yeah, that's the one person I recognize is that not Kirstie Alley. The woman who played Kirstie Alley's part is playing the angry mom who's getting mad at her mob boss husband for getting all
That
her
is
sons
right.
killed.
No, I could
Yeah.
see her. I could see,
Yeah.
but probably when I watched it, I didn't even put two and two together. Last,
No.
I was still probably buzzing over that car hitting the traffic light
Yes.
in the truck forcing the thing. Oh, the whole family gets always with the families. Don't take your family anywhere in a PM movie.
No, it's amazing because you think of the best ones. The family, I think, gets killed in all the best ones, right? Because it's this one, Recoil, Zero Tolerance. Robert Patrick's family gets
Oh
murdered.
yeah,
I think
yeah they
Last Man
do.
Standing. Do they kill Wincott's family?
Does he have a family or does he just have a wife? He just has his wife. I
He has a
thought.
wife that gets
Does
yeah.
she die?
I feel like, but maybe I'm thinking of another Wincott. Right? I mean, yeah, Wincott doesn't seem like the family type, right? Like it seems like all these other guys, they've got these families that just get.
Yeah, Wincott, I don't think ever had a family. He would have a wife.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gary Daniels seemed to be really always into being like the family man in these.
Yeah. Yeah, he was always a family man, and he kind of the way C. Thomas Howell dresses like a '90s kid in this. Like he had like those kind of '90s outfits too. Like he had like the Zach Morris like oversized sweatshirt from like the later, say, but and he had the kind of the bowl like the surfer bowl cut in those movies, and yeah, and then I mean he's a teacher, and he's like dressed like
teacher. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like Dennis Miller from Weekend Update on Saturday Night Live in the '90s, right, with the coat and the jeans, and yeah, these movies it's like it's like they're so '90s that even when they're doing the '70s, they're '90s.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you can't stop it. You can't stop it.
No, exactly. So, yeah, so this is it. He lives happily ever after. There is no, he doesn't get tortured for two more movies the way John Wick did after killing the high table guy. And it's kind of funny too about this movie because it's like when he decides he's going to turn on Ed Lauter, it's a quick like turn on. Like it's one of those things where I'm like, man, this movie, how's this movie going to end? Because it's only like 20 minutes left, and it's like, oh no, it's just going to be a big car chase, and that's going to be it.
Yeah. Ed Lauter's a jerk. Time to kill him. Off a biplane. Aha! You didn't see that coming, though, did you?
No. God bless Spiro Razatos high on honeycombs and whatever else he was high on when he came up with these action sequences. And yeah, the sweeper is definitely for people who haven't seen. I mean, I know when I first heard about this movie, it was Kenner from Movies in the Attic told me to watch it, and I was like, "What? C. Thomas Howell movie? Really? Like that's
right.
You're serious that that's a good movie?" And he's like, "Just trust me." And I was like, "Man, I don't know how." I was embarrassed that I didn't trust him when I watched this.
Yeah, this one I think I had on one of those like Mill Creek collections, and I'm just
yes.
oh, okay, it's a PM movie, so it's got to be at least watchable. And then again, I watched it, and once we got to that second chase scene, I was like, oh my, how have I waited? How have I not known about this? I mean, because I can imagine going into if I happened to see it at the video store, I probably would have been like, what the C. Thomas Howell? Come on.
Right. I mean, because in 1995,
give me a martial arts guy. Okay, I need Gary Daniels. Exactly. I'm going to rent a movie, or Michael Worth. Give me one of these guys.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, there is a cover version of this, which I've never seen this one out in the wild, where it's got him with the House of Pain hat on, and I don't even know like how I would be like, is he really wearing a House of Pain hat? Like, am I gonna watch this movie with that? I mean, and I guess in the '90s, I don't even know if I would have thought that was cool,
Yeah, I don't know either. I just know I don't know if I saw it. I just ignored it and erased it from my memory until I got it on the Mill Creek collection. So.
Yeah, it is a classic. And for people listening, it's on YouTube, but then also I think it's not on Tubi, but some other free streamers I think might have it, like Plex or
Yeah, Plex often does.
yeah. The problem with Plex is that Plex really likes the commercials. They're heavy-handed with the commercials. So I think to your point, like the Mill Creek version is probably the best way to go because you don't have to worry about the commercials.
Correct.
And this is one that's worth having. I think I've got the version that when you go to the IMDb page where you've got the woman who looks like Diane Lane on the cover
Yes.
with sunglasses on, right? That's the version that I have with a car that's not anywhere in the movie at all.
It says red line on the license plate.
Right, exactly, right. Yeah, I have no idea what that's even from. But yeah, and the C. Thomas Howell like roughly looks like him when he's shooting up the casino thing. But I can't even be sure if that's him. Um, but I think that's the DVD that I have is that version.
Yeah, I'm looking at it, the picture right now. Yeah, I wouldn't even guess. It looks like C. Thomas Howell trying to be in the Matrix or something. Well, so is the Diane Lane wannabe with her Mac.
Yeah.
It's not a good cover.
No.
I mean, it's a fine cover, but it has nothing to do with the movie.
Now it's also got a typo. It says either you in or
Yes.
in their way, which it should be either you're in or in their way. But
Right.
yeah, so even that's just yeah, he like which again I think just kind of leads to like the hidden gem factor of this that like you're like Ben, like why would I watch this movie? It's got like you said, it's got like some fake Diane Lane, and it's got this car that makes no sense, and it's got a typo on the cover, and it's got C. Thomas Howell. Like, it's interesting if there ever is a point where Spiro Razatos becomes the star of these things, where it's just like action directed by Spiro Razatos, and that's like what's on the cover. People are like, oh, okay, now I'll get that.
That is a great point. I'm glad you just mentioned that because what we need, Vinegar Syndrome or Kino Lover or whoever is out there listening to us, we need a Spiro Rosato's PM box set.
Yes. Yeah. I
With
mean,
introductions from him and for each film. Hi, I'm Spiro Razatos. You may remember me from The Sweeper. Today we're going to take a look at Recoil. Yeah, come on.
yeah. I mean, and like all of the ones that you think of, like it's like kind of the best, PMs. I mean, Last Man Standing is him. Rage, Recoil, we talked about. He also did The Rage, the movie with Lorenzo Lamas and Roy Scheider and I think Gary Busey. So yeah, I mean, he just like I think the only one I don't see Zero Tolerance under him. I don't know if he did that one. That might be the only one that he.
Yeah, who's the other guy that I can't think of his name right now. But there's another one who he may have been a disciple. I can't think of the man's name.
Let's see here. There's Robert Patrick and Titus Welliver in Zero Tolerance. This is another great one for people listening. Like the thing with PM stuff, the way I always look at PM is it's like, because we were talking about Canon, it's almost like Canon's wave starts to crest, like it kind of starts to break in like the early 90s, right, where they kind of over leveraged themselves with those the big budget movies that didn't work out, and it's like they're kind of starting to kind of fade a little bit, and that's when PM, like you said, like they kind of get past like the City Lights and get past the Lawrence Hilton Jacobs stuff and all of that, and suddenly they just blow up. It's like almost like you okay, what am I going to do now? There's no Canon. Oh, here's PM making all this great stuff.
Right, like when Canon started disappearing, at the time I don't think I even really noticed because there were so many other companies then that followed like PM that it was like, all right, and then after a while you're like, hey, what happened to those Canon movies that they used to make?
Right, exactly. Because I think actually, I think one of the last ones was Street Night, and I remember reading, I think it was Entertainment Weekly reviewed it, and the guy who reviewed it wasn't impressed. And he called it Sleep Tight instead of Street Night. But I know that was like one of the last Canon ones to go there.
And I don't even know, that may have been one where that they just kind of like it may have been like originally a Paramount, and then Paramount gave up on it, and Canon like swooped in and got it, but.
Yeah, exactly. Now, is it Red Horton? Is that the guy? Because he's a stunt coordinator for.
No, that's not who I'm thinking of. I knowing I'll probably remember it at about 2 o'clock in the morning, which will do nobody any good on this podcast. But
What about Joe Murphy? He's another stunt coordinator, Broadway Joe Murphy. Um,
wasn't him either.
no,
I
okay,
can't. I'm trying to even think like of a movie.
that he might have done.
Yeah, and I'm not thinking of it. So
That's all right. No worries. No worries. Well,
I'll DM you at 3 o'clock in the morning.
right, we go. That's all right. No worries. So then when I do the intro for this, I go. Of course, I say when I do the intros for this after, I'll mention. Of course, now everybody's going to have already heard the intro to this and be like, oh, what are they talking about? But yeah, I mean. Yeah, Zero to, I mean, it's another great. It's the only one that doesn't really, of all the kind of my favorite PMs. That I don't really always see Spiro Razatos. I'm trying to, because I mean, he also did. I mean, he did T-Force. He did.
Oh, T-Force! What a great film.
I know, and I mean that's. I'm pretty sure that one's all Spiro. That he's just just yeah, just I mean I mean, Evan Laurie and
Your
uh
boy Darren McBee was back
Jeremy
in that one.
exactly, yes, which I mean you have to love. Yeah,
Ja-
Malibu is just yeah.
Jack Scalia, obviously. Yeah.
Right, and he's like got a thing against androids, which of course he would have to be like prejudiced against androids, and then just decide like, okay, that I'm gonna be able to get past my prejudice to team up with this guy to be able to take down Evan Laurie and Darren McBee, and he does, and of course that one we get like that opening of with Vernon Wells, and it's just where it's like, oh, if you need him, Vernon Wells is here for an opening sequence, and then we'll just be done with him.
Yeah, he didn't make it long, but he made it. He made his mark.
Exactly. Yeah. So, yeah, I think for PM people, I mean, the sweeper is an interesting one because I think, like, because we've just been describing this here, I think for people looking for PM or just looking to get into these kinds of movies, I mean, this is what made the video store and then like in a way,
Mm,
because you just never knew what you were going to get when you rented a movie, and the sweeper is kind of that really like that epitome of the movie that like you think could be a dud, and it ends up being fantastic.
yeah, yeah. Like now, I wish if I did see it, I didn't walk past it or didn't like be like, who the hell thinks C. Thomas Howell is an action star?
Well, just like who thinks Anna Nicole Smith is an action star, and
But you get like that made sense. Like, okay, obviously we know why they're putting her in a movie.
right. No, that's a good point. Yes. Right. No,
People are
that
going to rent that for a reason, and they will not be disappointed
right. Right.
because that
Exactly.
reason was not like the fine acting skills of one Anna Nicole Smith.
Yeah.
I've needed this in my life. No.
No. Well, and I mean, when you watch that blooper reel, it's amazing, like how they do. It's like when you watch the NFL, right, with the Eagles when they have like a couple yards to get, and they kind of do that whole thing where they kind of push the quarterback over the 2 yards. That's kind of like the whole cast and crew is just kind of carrying Anna Nicole Smith, and they're just getting her over the goal line for that touchdown. It's like the work that they did to make that movie work is just absolutely. It's another remarkable thing. It's another one for PM where you're just like, how they were able to pull this stuff off is just amazing. And yeah, I mean, again, the sweeper's another one where you're just like, how did it, yeah. Yeah, I guess saving money on Janet Gunn's wardrobe and having a police station was how they made it work.
Do what you got to do, I guess. Yeah.
That's exactly. Well, yeah. Well, Chris, as we're wrapping up here, anything else that you wanted to mention about the sweeper that we might have missed?
You know what? Again, just like you said, if you've not seen The Sweeper, you need to see The Sweeper because it is a wonderful film.
Yeah, exactly. And I think for all of us that kind of do these movies and watch these movies and talk about these movies, the sweeper is one of those ones that it's like if one of us says the sweeper, everybody just immediately knows, right? They know, blowing up oxygen tank scene and all the kind of stuff in that movie. And so it's good for you. You'll be more hip to the lingo. If I'm saying that, I sound like David Ogden Stiers in Less Than Zero, I think is the movie, right? Where he's like, like wrong on or whatever he was saying. Of like hip to the lingo. But like this is one of those movies where it's like there's a shorthand when we talk about, like the 3 hours of PM and stuff like that. And this is one of those ones that, yeah, like you said, if you haven't seen this one yet, you're not going to regret it. You're not going to be like, what were these guys talking about?
I have some breaking news for you.
Okay.
I have the man that I was thinking of is one Cole McKay, and he did the
Oh,
stunt coordinating on like the Silencers, another Jack Scalia PM one.
yes. Okay.
He is another one who's quite good at things, at stunt things, obviously.
Yeah, and so he did like he's doing like Transformers and stuff like that now,
Right.
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's another one who went big time after a while, but he did a lot of those, cut his teeth doing those direct to video stuff.
And he's also doing, I guess, I don't know if these are these are Emmett Furler Oasis movies or if it's kind of like after him, but like Paradise City and Savage Salvation. He's done some stunt coordination work on those as well. But yeah, he's definitely, but yeah, like we were saying, like he's tons of great stuff in there, like you said. Yeah, and like I wonder if he was a if it wasn't so much he was a disciple of Rosatos because he's older too. I wonder if the two of them were just like having these like honeycomb fueled overnight sessions where they were just coming up with stuff.
It looks like he did Land of the Free. He did let's see, TNT with Olivier Gruner.
Yeah.
Executive Target, which has crazy ass chase scenes in that, if I recall correctly. Roy Scheider is the president.
Yes.
Darth Breed is the Silencers, which that's what I was like. He was the one on Skyscraper that we've mentioned 19 times. One Man's Justice.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Cole McKay, you also are a great man.
Yeah. Yeah. Just looking at these ones here. I mean, like you said, Executive Target, like the chase scenes in that one with when you get a movie where you're saying like, oh, Michael Madsen's character is a car driver. It's like, I'm surprised PM didn't do more movies where characters were race car drivers. Right.
It would have made sense why they were so good.
Yeah. And Land of the Free, another one where somebody's going on vacation and gets caught up in a PM chase. I think there was like a wood paneled station wagon with a canoe on the roof that got flipped over. It's just like you just going on vacation in LA was a dangerous thing in the 90s.
Never go anywhere. Just never go anywhere.
No, or at the very least, make sure you have insurance on your vacation because you're gonna lose that deposit on that cabin out in Big Bear if you you get caught up in one of those chase sequences on the 103 or whatever, the 405 or whatever the different highways. It's PM. Like it was all inside LA stuff, and they didn't, and just list out a whole bunch of random highways for us, and that's perfectly fine. We're okay. They're freeways out there anyway, so they're not even highways.
If you are in LA this weekend or any weekend really, and you see a biplane, just turn around and go home.
Just go home. Yeah. Eat the cost on that deposit. Just, you trust us because you don't want to be without a car in LA. That's the other thing too, right? Is that if you get into those big, those fender benders and all those big, pileups that they would have in those PM movies, those were people that were out, couldn't go anywhere in LA without a car.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Like Missing Person said, nobody's walking in LA. So, yeah, they were stuck. So, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, as we're wrapping up here, Chris, and as we're staying out of LA and making sure we don't get ourselves into any car accidents or anything that you'd like to plug.
Well, of course, I would love everybody to check out bulletproofaction.com. We will actually be celebrating our 10th anniversary in August. I cannot believe I've been doing this for that long. And of course, also the Bulletproof Podcast, which I think is turning 5 this year. So I've just been spending way too much time watching PM entertainment movies. But that's, I mean, I could be going on a vacation, and Lord knows what would happen to me. So maybe I'm safe to just sit at home and watch some movies.
Yeah, I mean, the only time you really have to worry about sitting at home watching movies, right, in a PM flick is either A, if you're related to the hero, so that's going to get you in trouble, or B, and this actually isn't a PM thing, this is a canon thing, is if you just happen to be in Miami around Christmas time.
Oh, yeah, you don't
That's
want
bad
that.
news.
You don't
Yeah.
want that.
No, so those are the only times that it's not safer to be at home. So as long as no one you're related to is a star of a PM flick, you're safer than you would be because yeah, those car pileups, they're just a mess.
Agreed.
Right, excellent. Well, yeah. Well, we'll wrap up here. Thanks for coming on, Chris. This was a really fun conversation. I think that the sweeper's always a fun one to talk about.
Yeah, when you suggested it, it took me about 2 seconds to say yes, I think, because I'm like, yeah, whoa, the sweeper.
Right,
Absolutely.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. Well, it's kind of the same thing, right, with American Ninja 2. It was like, oh, yeah,
Oh, yeah, that one. Oh, please. Yeah, if you haven't listened to that episode. Oh, I love American Ninja. I might watch that again. Just the mere mention of it makes me want to watch it. So
I know. I mean, the one thing that I was reminded of was with the Blind Beggars Bar and American Ninja is that we had like some kind of cheap strip club that was kind of like ripped out of like an Amir Shervan movie or something in this movie. It was like barely even worth mentioning.
right.
And whereas American Ninja 2 was like, no, Blind Beggars Bar. We're gonna have action sequences. We're gonna do all kinds of stuff. And so yeah. I mean, the other thing too, I guess, is that the pop music influence, right? That we had Guns N' Roses in the first one. We've got House of Pain in this one. So it's like, I guess the next movie we talk about is going to maybe have to have a band from the 2000s. I don't know if we have to keep,
Ooh,
yeah, like we're
keep the
80s, 90s.
tradition going. You're right. Yeah.
Right, I know. Yeah. So we'll have to see what comes after that. Well, yeah. Well, thank you again, Chris, for coming on. And yeah, thank you everybody for listening. And we'll be back soon. Bye, everyone. Coming up, Chris Kacvinsky from Bulletproof Action is on, and we're going to be looking at the sweeper. So we've got our House of Pain hats on, we've got our ripped jeans and our goatees, and we are ready to get after it and blow up some oxygen tanks. So that'll be coming up here in just a bit. Next week, Sean Malloy from I Must Break This podcast is on, and we are going to be looking at Electric Boogaloo, the documentary that covers Canon films. So that was a fun conversation there, kind of going over that there. I think that documentary came out almost 10 years ago now, so but definitely a lot to cover there. And then in 2 weeks, Ty from Comeuppance is back on, and we are going to be looking at Shepherd Code and Fortress. Not the Fortress with Christopher Lambert, but the Fortress with Bruce Willis. So we're getting back into some Willis. And then Shepherd Code has a small part from Don the Dragon Wilson. And then later this week, I'm hoping to get the next DTVC extra in. So that's going to be covering this. We're going to be finishing up the Star Trek series. I've watched part 5, so I'm ready to go on that one. I still got to do part 6. The other thing is this Thursday is a holiday here in the U.S. It's the 4th of July holiday, so kind of a big one here. And I'm going to be off that Thursday and Friday from work. But my hope is to get the episode recorded tomorrow, possibly. So then, and then I can post it on time on Thursday. We're gonna see. We're gonna see if I can make that happen. So that'll be the plan. But hopefully, if it's not Thursday, it'll be Friday that we'll get that DTVC extra one up and finish off the original series with Star Trek, or the original cast film series with Star Trek. And then after that, like I said, we're doing the Ip Man series. So that'll be Donnie Yen. And again, hoping that those will stay on Tubi, because I've been having all kinds of issues with streamers removing and pulling things and putting things back and all that kind of stuff. So we'll see if Tubi can keep them, then we'll definitely do them. So that'll be the plan after that. In terms of the site, was originally planning to do The Gardener, and speaking of things getting pulled, removed from Amazon. Was barely there for 10 days. Not sure what's going on with that movie. It took forever for it to make it to any kind of free streamer as it was. It got on Tubi. It was there for a week, and then it was removed there before I had a chance to see it. Then it was on Prime. I did get to see it on Prime. Went to get images and saw it was pulled there. So I don't know what the deal is. I don't know what happens with some of these movies because honestly, I don't know like why The Gardener wouldn't just be on every free streamer. Like what about that would make that an issue? But it's not. So I guess eventually we'll try to get to it. So plan is I'm going to try to do Top Gunner for next week. I saw that one was on Tubi. While I was checking it out, I noticed that Wacky Races is on. Or no, sorry, Laugh Olympics. Laugh Olympics is on Tubi. So I'm gonna have to check that out as well. But at least that's there. Then for other movies, I've got Frankenhooker and Crackerjack 2 listed next on the upcoming films watch list. So yeah. The plan is hopefully we'll get those in as well. I think I'll just kind of stick with that from now on. I had this big plan that I was going to do like a Dolph movie this month and a Pion film and all of that. I think I'm just going to stick with what I've already watched and go from there and kind of see what happens. If The Gardener comes back, if we get it on streamer, then I'll review it as soon as possible before it disappears again for whatever reason that's happening with that movie. So we'll see what goes on there. And then before we get started here, we've got my new segment here, the spotlight, or my opening thought, right? The opening thought that I have here. And so, opening thought that I had, it was originally going to be on this article I read in the LA Times about Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, not doing well, and that this idea that there weren't enough films in the theater, and so it wasn't creating enough momentum, and that's why blockbusters weren't doing as well because it was kind of like one movie begets another, and because there was these big gaps and big releases, that was an issue. Well, I don't think that's so much of an issue anymore, especially with Inside Out 2 doing over $1 billion already in less than a month of being out. But one of the issues I have is this whole thing with sequels, and that this thing where we can't just have sequels anymore for whatever reason. We just don't want to do sequels. Two, the idea of these origin stories or these side stories with these colons, right? Like Furiosa, a Mad Max story. Like it can't just be the sequel to Mad Max Fury Road. It's got to be something else, right? You couldn't even do Mad Max Fury Road 2, right? That just, for whatever reason, that would just be beyond the pale for the modern film industry, which makes zero sense. The thing I liken it to, and I haven't seen Mad Max Fury Road, I haven't seen Furiosa, a Mad Max story yet, so I can't say for sure, but I can say why I was turned off from watching it, why I didn't want to see it. I'm just tired of these kinds of movies coming out, this idea. You imagine Godfather 2, right? Godfather 2 is probably one of the most, it's one of the most it's probably objectively the best sequel of all time, right? So I'm comparing something to Godfather 2 is probably not fair. But imagine if Godfather 2 was Vito, a Godfather story, and you just remove the entire Michael piece out, and it was just Robert De Niro playing a young Vito Corleone, right? That's essentially what you're doing with it. And granted, that alone would have probably been a decent movie because what we get in Godfather 2 is fantastic. But what Coppola does with it, right, where he's interspersing, Vito's origin story, right, really just coming of age story is more of what it is. It's more of him, becoming who he became, played by Robert De Niro, at the same time that his son, played by Al Pacino, is coming into his own. That layering and that juxtaposition was so fantastic. It's why it makes it one of the best movies ever. And it'd be curious to see. I mean, I part of it is I think that, I don't know if people are going to do all of these sort of deep dives or all of these autopsies, right? Or I guess postmortems, right? Postmortems on a movie like Furiosa and why it didn't work. But I think I think for the film industry, I think if you can just start doing regular sequels, I think if they had made, I haven't seen Furiosa yet, so I don't know. But what if it had just been a sequel to Fury Road, where Charlize Theron's character is there, now I don't know, maybe her character, because I haven't seen Fury Road either, so maybe her character dies at the end of Fury Road, so that's why they had to make it a prequel. I don't know. But can we just do sequels? Can we just do a next story? Can we just continue a story? I'm watching this TV show, The Bear, which has been really, really fun. And it's not like they just decide, okay, we're just gonna make the whole second season Carmen's origin story, right? They intersperse pieces of his origin with regular telling about more of the regular stuff. I wish we could get more of that. Like let's get the origins of characters within the regular story instead of this sort of this hokey thing. Also, can we use numbers for sequels again? Right? It does. I mean, if you think of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the most successful non-Avengers movies were the Iron Man ones, and they were part 1, part 2, part 3. The second most successful were the Guardians of the Galaxy. They were volume 1, volume 2, volume 3, right? Like, I'm not saying that if the Marvels was Captain Marvel 2, the Marvels, it would have done better, but it might have. I mean, might have done something, at least it would have made more sense to be like this, wouldn't have made people afraid to watch it because they would have said, oh, I didn't watch all this other stuff first. They would have known, like, okay, this is the sequel to the Captain Marvel movie I watched before. So I don't know. It's my little, it's a kind of, it's an opening thought, but it's also kind of a rant. But yeah, I'd like to see, and it's something that's infecting the DTV world, right? Like, we're not seeing numbers for sequels in the DTV world either, right? It's, we were talking about Ty and Brett, I was talking about the kickboxer movies, right? That they're Vengeance and Armageddon and things like that. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. But rant done. Hopefully we'll get some more traditional sequels with some numbers and things like that in the future, but I doubt it. I think it's just going to keep getting bad like this, and then we're going to keep getting stinkers, and people aren't going to want to watch the movie. So anyway, why don't we stop it here, and then we'll have John from After Movie Dieter playing our theme song, and when we come back, Chris Kacvinsky from Bulletproof Action is on, and we're going to be talking about The Sweeper.